Instead of seeing a monster, I began to see human beings. 10 or 12 years on, we started to get contact about the offenders, and they're going to come out of prison, and you've got to start to process that.
Sure.
And so we were invited to attend their parole hearings
Okay.
in prison, where essentially you go into prison, you basically face the offender across the table with the parole board, and you read out just a one-page statement of how the crime has impacted you. And it's an incredibly powerful
Yeah.
process for us as a family
Yeah.
when we first started doing it. And for me, when I went into both the offenders, they both heard my mother and my father's statements before I'd gone in, because we went in one by one. My mother did it, my father did it, I did it. I've got an older brother who didn't want to be part of the process, and but that was fine, so he didn't get involved. But when I walked in to see the offenders, they were both very emotional.
Yeah.
Having been teenagers in the murder trial, they were now grown men, having spent 12, 14 years in prison.
Yeah.
And instead of seeing a monster, I began to see human beings. I
Wow.
think it was quite transformational for me.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, to see the person that had tortured your brother to death crying and holding a tissue and being very emotional, having heard what my mother had just told him, was
Wow.
a real eye opener to
I feel
me.
like crying right now, to be honest.
Yeah,
I can feel it.
I actually walked
You're
out that
really
room.
upset. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of describe it as like a cloak was lifted from him.
Sure.
He wasn't just a monster; he was a human being,
Yeah.
and he was definitely very ashamed. Um, so this was for both the offenders actually. We both had a similar response. So the meeting with Craig, the parole hearing with Craig, who's the younger offender. Um, we eventually, well, I'd heard about this so when I was in the prison where Craig was at. I'd heard for the first time about this thing called restorative justice,
Yeah.
which is a process where victims and offenders can come together to have a dialogue, a contact, and with an option to talk about it, and to for the victim perhaps to get some some information and express their feelings.
My
And
understanding is it is aimed more at the victim. There's no benefit to the perpetrator as such.
it's kind of it is victim led, but it is both sides.
Yeah. No, it's as in the sense of people, if they join the program, if they're offenders, they don't get time off or anything like that.
Oh no, that's right. Yeah, no, it's very much
It's a
part.
voluntary program
It's a
that
voluntary.
the
Yeah, that's
offender
right.
wishes to be
Yeah,
part of because they
yeah,
want to be part of it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, people listening shouldn't take that because an offender does restorative justice, it looks good on their record.
It's irrelevant to that. It's a program.
It's irrelevant to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is a voluntary thing that both sides can opt into
Yeah.
to help themselves and to help themselves from from a processing angle, if you like. That the
Like
offender
that
going down that
process
remorse
whereby
curve.
you and I did that thing, we had to touch the body of the loved one to know it was real. There's sometimes we have to go through these types of processes, don't we, to
Exactly,
get in
exactly.
touch with something,
Yeah,
reality of it.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. I mean, there were you don't if you think about murder. I mean, restorative justice is used across all the whole criminal justice setting and for multiple, not just in the crime sense. Um, in a murder sense, it's particularly difficult because how do you say to the family of someone who lost their loved one to a horrific event
Yeah.
that would you like to meet the perpetrator? It's very difficult to broach that topic.
Yeah. And with
Um,
all the murders I've known, and I've known quite a few because I used to work in prisons and offender justice and so on, often they happen momentarily. There aren't that many that happen in this way. I mean, this is
yeah,
particularly sadistic and horrible. And it's extraordinary that you're willing to face this, and people should know this, that it's like really is quite extraordinary, really.
yeah, and I think. the best way for me to describe why I was wanting to do it is I came out of that parole hearing with Craig
Right.
so curious about him. And when you have in the murder trial, we didn't find a lot about what happened to Simon that night,
Yeah.
how they met him, the attack on him. I had so many unanswered questions in my head, and years later, this was 17 years afterwards. They were rifling through my head, these questions, and I needed to know.
Yeah.
And the other thing for me was being Simon's twin. I really needed to bring him alive in those last few moments of his life.
Okay.
I really need to know Simon um, just before he died.
Yeah.
I think that was a twin thing.
Yeah.
Um, so there was lots of reasons for me doing the meeting, and yeah, we eventually you go through a long preparation process. We had you effectively do a risk assessment around these kind of meetings. You don't enter into them lightly at all.
Hmm.
And so we had two really good facilitators who would meet with me, meet with Craig, and we did a bit of a back and forth process over a year
Yeah.
before we eventually got to arrange the meeting in the prison where he was at the time, which was Woodhill in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
So he was at the back end of his prison sentence, but still in a closed prison.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I would describe the meeting with Craig as very transformational for me. You obviously I went into that meeting nervous, um, thinking about am I betraying Simon
Yeah.
by meeting his killer? What would I had a few friends that said to me, "Oh my God, how can you do that? What would Simon think of you meeting him?" And some of those comments upset me, but I wanted to do it, there was times where nearly backed out, but Craig walked into that room and we sat down and it was to give people a sort of image. It was in the prison chapel, which is pretty much the quietest place in a
Yeah.
prison. Circle of chairs. I had my wife with me. We had two facilitators. Craig had his probation officer and I think another officer with him as well. And we had an incredible 4 hours together,
Wow.
where we just really just unpacked that night. Um, I describe
And
myself as
that
very lucky.
led to you getting involved in this broader restorative justice.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The meeting was very transformational to
That
me.
was a doorway for you, as it were.
Very healing. Very yeah. And as a result of the meeting with Craig, I've become a real advocate of
Yeah.
restorative justice. I actually do a lot of work in prisons promoting
Yeah.
restorative justice now, and I work for an organization called Why Me,
Yeah.
who are charitable organization who promote restorative justice and access to it.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work for them. Yes, I mean it's Craig in that meeting was incredibly open and honest to me. And I consider myself very lucky. Some cynics would say I was just doing it just to appease you
Yeah.
and get off. But I mean, believe me, Craig was terrified of meeting me,
Yeah.
and it was extremely hard for him as it was for me. And I think he did a brave thing by meeting me.
Yeah.
And his observation of me was he was very surprised at how at peace I was, how that I wasn't angry. His reflection afterwards was I expected Nick to be angry with me, and I wasn't. I wasn't looking for. I wasn't looking to have my peace with him. I was looking to have a dialogue and a conversation, and we talked at length about what had happened and how we both felt about things.
And it also seems to me important that you were there because you wanted to get something from it. You had very clear goals.
Yeah.
And they would be to people who've been through victims of crime, they would understand a lot of the goals that you had without a doubt. Having some of those questions then answered, because the unanswered questions can be torturous, absolutely
Oh,
torturous.
it's right. They sit in your head
Yeah.
all the time.
I think of
Um,
somebody like, for example, the McCanns who've lost a child. They don't have those questions answered. I mean, I don't know how they cope. I don't know how
you're
anybody
right.
copes
You're
with
right.
that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's no possibility of getting those questions
you're
answered
right. Yeah, yeah,
if you
that must be torturing in a way because
yeah,
you have
absolutely.
these gaps and the worries and the thoughts of what happened that night and how and it must be and I can sit here and say
And even if the truth is horrible, it's still the truth and still needs to be known, right?
exactly that is so important. For me, it was I wanted the honest truth about that night,
Yes, of course.
and how because I remember saying to my wife, however horrible, and I asked him things like, what was the last thing Simon said, and was he crying, and how did you throw him in the pond, and um, how did you attack him, and all those kind of awful things that were very painful. Some of which I don't tell my mum and dad, because it's just that they're just not things that they need to
Just
know.
hearing those questions, I'm finding it difficult to remain composed. It's
Yeah,
incredibly powerful stuff, really powerful.